Hello, parents, mothers, students, teachers, professors. My name is ALberto Faria, and in today's presentation, I will introduce you someone who have earned our respect, and I hope that after watching me public speaking, he earned yours as well. Before beginning my official presentation, I want to ask you a couple of questions. Like, have you ever felt threatened? Have you ever been in a life-threatening situation? Have you realized that we're always hiding behind walls for protection? Why? Because we know what's outside. We know how the world can really be. We know that criminality is a power in this world. Even though I wish to say our country, Venezuela, is an exception, I can't. And we all know it firsthand. Now, think for a minute of becoming part of that world, to become someone else and new, to throw away your values like it's nothing. Will you be able to? I know I won't. But he does. He's known as the man who became part of that world and came back to tell his story. With no backup, he travels where normal people wouldn't even think about it. He hides behind the name Antonio Salas, and welcome to Anonymous Inc. For today's presentation, my objectives to cover are who is he, the pseudonym Antonio Salas, his work as a journalist, and a personal conclusion. Who is he? He's a born Spanish criminal reporter. He jumped, and because of his sense of curiosity, he travels where we won't even think about it. He lives in the shadow of the world, so one day we bring it up to light. Because of his work, he called himself Antonio Salas. This is his pseudonym. With no backup, a camera under his jacket, and a computer at home to tell his story, he travels to the shadow of the world. He becomes part of the worst of humanity, in which he met humanity itself. As a journalist, Antonio has done a remarkable job. He has written 4 books, have 2 movies based on his work, and 1 documentary of his masterpiece. He has won the Best Journalist in Spain, and has been nominated several times to the Best Journalist in Europe. The first book was Diary of a Skinhead. But before telling you the story, I want to tell you what a skinhead is. And a skinhead is someone who believes in Hitler's belief. Is someone who, in this 21st century, still believes in the mistakes of the Second World War. He believes that the Jewish community shall not be part of the European perfect community. He believes that prostitutes shall not be able to be part of our community. Smokers as well. And before all, people with terminal diseases, because they contaminate our community and species. During this book, he tells the story of a journalist which partner got killed. And because of the inefficiency of the police who wasn't able to catch the culprit, he decided to undercover himself and become part of the skinhead. He shaved his head, as you can see in the top right corner picture. And behind the name Tiger 88, Tiger, as a pseudonym from Power, a nickname, and 88, meaning 88, a number of the neo-Nazi belief. 88 is, in another meaning, double H. 8 is the 8th letter of the alphabet, and double 8 means double H, meaning Heil Hitler. During this work, he took 1 whole year to finally catch the head of the organization and the people which he worked with. His second book was The Year of Traffic on Women, a whole organization which took 1.5 years to process. During this undercover operation, he hides himself as an owner of a prostitution house in Segovia, and he comes to Madrid for buying prostitutes to his house. These prostitutes are brought from America, Venezuela, Colombia, Panama, Dominican Republic, and brought to Spain with a fresh idea of success. But they didn't receive them. They came to Spain without passports and a huge debt to pay, and prostitution was the only way left. During a whole year, he bought prostitutes and gave the freedom they deserved to the authorities in Spain. But he wasn't able to finally catch the head of the human trafficking organization. So he decided to have more extreme ways to move from women to children. Children from around 9 to 12 years old, which virginity is highly praised. Luckily, this was the first and the last, because during that time, working along with the police, we were finally able to curb the human trafficking organization. His book was published the 8th of March of 2004. And 8 days later, the worst day in history of the European history happened. The United States had the 9/11 as a tragic event. In Europe, it's the 12th, a day where 2 trains in Madrid were blown up by terrorists. During this time, Antonio was considering retirement, but he decided not to, because he couldn't accept how people would do something like this behind the names of beliefs, behind the names of religion, personal community, political position, and sexuality. So he decided that his next target will be to become a terrorist. He studied for 6 years Arabic. He wrote handwritten and talk. He wrote the whole Quran, which is a book twice as thick as the Bible, with hand, in order to practice his handwriting. But before becoming a terrorist, you need to know what terrorism is. What is international terrorism? Any expert of this field will tell you the exact same answer. International terrorist is born, raised, and trained in another place than this, Venezuela, our country. Normal people will think about the Middle East, maybe Europe and the United States itself, but not where we live. After all, here in Venezuela, there are at least 4 million guns without any control. At least 1 gun for 1 person, 1 Venezuelan citizen. So this was the perfect place for terrorism to grow and develop. He traveled here to Venezuela during his 5th year of his study, becoming already a Muslim. A Muslim is someone around my height with brown skin tone, but Antonio wasn't. Antonio Salas was someone white skin tone, but then how white skin tone can become a Muslim? He needed to darken his skin, so he passed a whole year in a process to darken his skin from white to Caucasian man to brown, in order to become a true Muslim. He traveled to Venezuela, and 4 days later was the ETA attack to the Spanish embassy here in Venezuela. He said it was destiny, so he decided to move and talk with the headquarters of the ETA, a terrorist group of Europe here in Venezuela, to their headquarters here. So he went, and he was able to meet Héctor Cubillas, a well-known terrorist living in our country. Well, not only living, he was working with our government. He was part of the Ministry of Agriculture, a well-known terrorist working in our government. He was looked for 5 murders in Spain, and his many attachments with terrorist attacks, and his links with terrorist organizations. Héctor Cubillas finally introduced him to Chino Carías, another well-known terrorist born here in Venezuela, who claimed himself to kill 40 cops in El Barrio 23 de Enero. During his time here, he was finally able to be the first journalist in history to be part of a terrorist community. This community was because in Spain there was an assassination attempt towards the president, and Chino Carías wanted to express his thoughts and his support towards this. And Antonio Salas was able to become part of this community, being the first journalist in history to finally be able to do something like this. Another month passed, and he was able to meet Vladimir Ramirez. As you can see in the right low corner, there's Héctor, Vladimir, with Antonio Salas and his mother. He is the brother of Carlos Ilich Ramirez, El Chacal, the Jackal. His main goal for becoming a terrorist was met the most worst terrorist of the 21st century, El Chacal, the Jackal. After Osama bin Laden, has been the most wanted terrorist in history. In the meeting with Vladimir Ramirez, the phone rang. It was no other than the Jackal himself. The Jackal wanted to talk with this Palestinian who traveled here to Venezuela because of his beliefs, and that he wanted to follow his lead. So he spoke with him, and the first words that rang out from the phone was Abdul Dailak, hello in Arabic. His 6 years from study finally brought to this moment. After talking with the Jackal, he spent a whole year giving calls back and forth for an entire year. Every single week they have a phone call. During this time, the Palestinian, Antonio Salas, become the man of confidence from the Jackal here in Venezuela. So the Jackal could ask him as a favor to be the lead of this website here. The official website of the Jackal was run by Antonio Salas. It was written in 5 languages which they all spoke: English, French, German, Arabic, and Spanish. After his many calls, the Jackal asked him a favor to be his representation in Europe in a terrorist meeting. In Sweden and Stockholm, there's a rule for free expression, which allowed the terrorists to have a meeting like this. And no other than himself was the representation of the worst terrorist in the 21st century. During this process, it took 7 years to finally finish the story in his book. During this, the consequence of his work were that he was able to imprison more than 100 terrorists, being from them Héctor Cubillas, Chino Carillas, and Vladimir Ramirez as well. He was also able to tell the European community that the Jackal, who is in France, in France, living 6 life decades, had a phone that every week he was able to make phone calls when he wasn't allowed to. His 4th book was Operation Princess, which is his only fictional book that he wrote. He took the best of his books for the 1st, the 2nd, and the 3rd, which were all masterpieces, but he tried to make someone which will make the audience excited. And this was the result. To finish, I wanted to say that during my research, I was finally able to know what humanity beliefs were. What will people do for their beliefs? For money. For money, people will traffic other people. For their beliefs, they will blow up a train, or they will do what 9/11 happened. For their sexuality or political position, the skinhead were. This is the story of a man who met humanity itself. Thank you very much.